The countdown has begun for the results of Delhi election 2025, an election that will have very interesting consequences for national politics. And the big question today is whether the budget and its big 12 lakh exemption for the salaried class can be an X factor in these elections. I'm Barkha Dutt. You're with the Mojo Story. We're looking ahead at who's going to be winning the Delhi elections to the best degree that anyone can predict the mind of the voter. The budget is a very interesting new entrant in the political discourse. The budget's exemption on income tax for income up to 12 lakh rupees is something that the Prime Minister reinforced in his election speeches in the last several hours. The C voter has an Insta poll, a poll taken right after the budget, assessing how people were responding to the budget. Will this be a new factor in an election where C voter surveys thus far seem to show that Arvind Kejriwal remains the most preferred candidate for Chief Minister? That said, Mr. Kejriwal is fighting perhaps the toughest political battle of his life since he entered politics. Not just the BJP, but the Congress has been launching a frontal attack on Kejriwal, with Sandeep Dixit, Congress leader, and Sheila Dixit's son also putting up a spirited fight against the former Chief Minister of Delhi. There's a lot to talk about. On the 8th, we will have the result. On the 5th, we will have the voting. We're in the last mile now of these elections, and joining us now is our newsmaker, our very favorite political pundit and analyst, Yashwant Deshmukh, the head of C Voter, who, as I said, has a very, very interesting post-budget Insta poll and a tracker right after that budget. And the question to be asked is whether that can have an impact on these elections. So while we bring up the first slide on how people thought that their monthly expenses, price rise, how this would be impacted, as that's coming up, Yashwant, in an election that's widely seen to be local, and you know, it's always been a very different result from Lok Sabha elections. Do you believe that the post-budget mood can impact these elections?
Well, it can. And if it actually does, then probably we would be looking at the sharpest of the late swings in any electoral politics, Barkha, because generally the late swings happen during the disaster or some unfortunate incident or something of that sort. You know, when all of a sudden something happens and we observe a late swing. In the recent past, the late swing in election is considered in a time frame of 4 to 12 weeks. You know that something is going bad, and for certain parties something is going good, and slow and steady, that is thing. But here we are talking about an impact within 72 hours, and that is something which is incredibly remarkable in that way, that if at all that kind of thing happens, then we are looking at a new genre of election campaigning and that kind of structure. And if it doesn't, then in that means that people do make up their mind in a way that doesn't really get swayed very easily with any last minute googly from one side. So a lot at stake, Barkha, because we also have to see how people are gonna react, how their reactions are changing, and how it is gonna impact the real-term politics from the electoral outcome perspective.
Yeah, so let's get, because I know we have very limited time with you today, I'm going to get straight to the first set of graphics that have been unveiled in the C Voter Insta poll taken right after the budget. Will prices come down after the budget? Now, this is quite interesting because, yes, to a large extent, say nearly 27%, a little bit, say 24.2%, and over 40.2% say not at all. But if we can move to the next slide, you also talk about quality of life. You also talk about monthly expenses. And one of the things that emerges as we look at these slides is that while people don't necessarily feel an immediate betterment, they are feeling more optimistic about the quality of life in the next year. Future, looking ahead. So present quality of life, 37% are saying, bhai, same hai. Only 25% or less than 25% are saying improved, present quality. But the moment you ask, all right, the budget has just been passed, how do you look at the next year? Just hold on to this slide for a moment for our producers. 40.5% say that it will improve. I want you to talk about this.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is not just about the present and the future, but Barkha, this is also interesting to see the change within 24 hours. Because we do a pre-budget tracker and we do a post-budget tracker. Some of the questions are common in that. And this question is common on that. And actually, I wrote a very, very critical piece about the government that they have lost I mean, the worst that can happen is that the middle class is losing the hope, that optimism index is going down. So, and my piece was, I mean, two back-to-back pieces on 2 days before the budget, they appeared, and I had to actually write down another one after this data come in there, because it
Yeah.
is remarkable. It is actually remarkable. I hadn't seen middle class losing hope, and for a really long time, it was going down and down and down. And right before budget, there was so much of pessimism among the middle classes, because there was a due to this entire narrative of reverie and freebie culture. Barkha, there is a distinct narrative that was settling with the middle class कि हमको क्या मिल रहा है? Because
Mm.
whenever the politicians come up with a freebie thingy, middle class says this freebie is aimed at the bottom of the pyramid. They are gonna get it free. The super rich is gonna get away because they do not need to think like us. But it is us, the middle class, you, me, most of the taxpayers, who actually take the burden that they feel like, "Ko kya mil raha hai?" And that is what I had written in the pre-budget tracker for India Today, and actually Reuters picked it up, and then it became kind of viral across it, that people are saying that it's pessimistic. Then post budget, when we talk to the same set of people, particularly the middle class, boom, it was like, yes, it didn't get boom that okay, सब कुछ रोजी हो गया है, but the sense that it will become better. That number
Yeah.
went up. The index of optimism went up. And that is remarkable. And when the index of optimism goes up, a lot changes in terms of narrative, a lot changes in terms of, like, for example, the question, will this budget leave more money in your hand to invest and save and like that? Yes,
Yeah.
a significant chunk of them said yes. And now that is critical, Barkha, because we all know that middle class goes on a spending spree only when they have extra cash in their hands.
Mm. Mm.
Of late, due to the tax structure, and also because of the inflation impact, and also because of the anxieties of the future, huge majority of the middle class was just becoming very, very reserved in terms of their expenditure, in terms of how much they should spend on the leisure, on the FMCG, on the even on the consumer durables and everything. And these are critical for kick-starting the economy again, which had taken a hit after COVID for a really long time. So,
Yeah.
all in all, it was a gamble. All I got, I mean, as you just very clearly mentioned, people are not saying that, oh, aaj महंगाई kam ho gayi. Nobody is saying that. People are very, very like that, okay, it is still not very much in the line, but I am hopeful that it will become. So that optimism index has certainly gone up big time.
Okay, so we have the two connected data points on this. If we can please just go to the first slide of this set first. Is this budget good for the middle class? That's what you actually asked. No, not this one. We were on the right slide. I just needed to look at the first slide on it, and then we asked about the 12 lakh exemption, right? So was it a good decision? 46.3% said okay. Does this budget benefit the middle class? 38.1% say yes, and 27.8% say yes to some extent. Only about 27% are saying no. So talk about this figure, and let's also look at the next slide at the same time, the 12 lakh exemption, right? Was it a good decision? Nearly 40, I would say nearly, if I round it off, or it would be
Nearly half of them have said
nearly
that.
half.
Yeah.
And 32.3% are saying okay, more needed, and only about 11.6% are saying नहीं, इससे भी ज़्यादा करना चाहिए था. ये अच्छा है, लेकिन this was poor. It's not meeting our expectations. Now let's look at these two slides together. Was this good for the middle class? Nearly half are saying yes, and good and okay decision is the majority of the response. Nobody can criticize this 12 lakh exemption except to say you could have given more tax relief.
So the criticism part is only coming from the inflation right now. I mean, it's
Yeah.
like we are happy with this. If only the inflation gets controlled, I would be really good. I would be really satisfied with this thing. Because, Barkha, you but so many times we have discussed in our tracker, which we talk every day, almost like on a daily basis, more than 2/3 of Indians had started saying that ghar khar chalana mushkil ho raha hai. It is really become difficult to run my kitchen. And that part was important for this government to understand that there is a kind of economic distress that is setting in, and that distress is not felt by the lower bottom of the pyramid because they are still getting free ration, free food is there. So, I mean, let's be very frank and upfront about it. If there was no free ration, if there was no free food program post COVID, we would have been in a real problematic situation in this country. Good that government did that, because if at least we are very happy that there are no hunger deaths in that kind of a crisis, so we are over that. And that free food program, which as per the even government estimates is kind of impacting 800 million people, and that's a big number, big huge number. Even if you take half of the people do not need it, suppose, then even that very very conservative estimate, some 300 to 400 people still need that, and that 300 million people is the kind of estimate before COVID. In our socio-economic parameter surveys and other things, we used to say, and all other social scientists used to come and say the same thing, that there are 300 million people in India who actually have only one food a day, one meal a day, and big number of them say we sleep empty stomach. So government doing that part of the food program did a huge favor, big time favor in any society, any civilized society. Hunger deaths are like ultimate betrayal of governance, if at all they happen anywhere. So thank you very much for that. But what happened? What was the flip side of that? Yes, they got the food, they got the thing, the bottom of the pyramid is good. But look at the middle class. They are still reeling under the inflation. For them, purchasing the food, purchasing the FMCG, that was really hitting them because incomes were not going up big time, taxations were not coming down big time, still the inflation was going up big time. So it was a complicated scenario. I think the 12 lakh exemption among the middle classes, almost every, this is by the way, the pie is of the entire India. Good decision, thing said by the middle class is more than 80%. I mean, the upper middle class is more than 80%. So they are extremely happy that, okay, this was very much needed. Good that it has happened. The reservation, or a little bit of reservation, that, okay, we are still waiting. Will it benefit only to some extent? That 28% that on the screen is the one which is still waiting for the inflation to go down. They are saying it is good, but it will become really relevant if the inflation comes down. And that is where I think the government has to work on.
Now, before we look at the next set of slides on the budget and the mood after the budget, the Prime Minister has been driving this message home in his speeches, wasting no time to try and convert the budget into some sort of political messaging. This is what he specifically said about the relief in income tax slabs. Take a look.
अगर नेहरू जी के जमाने में आप 12 लाख रुपए कमाते होते तो 12 लाख रुपए की आय पर आपकी 1/4 सैलरी सरकार वापस ले लेती, टैक्स में चली जाती। अगर आप आज इंदिरा जी का जमाना होता तो 12 लाख की कमाई पर आप करीब करीब सुनकर के चौंक जाएंगे। अगर आज इंदिरा जी की सरकार होती और 12 लाख पर आपके 10 लाख रुपया टैक्स में चले जाते, उनके जमाने में ये था, इसलिए मैं समझा रहा हूं। 10-12 साल पहले तक कांग्रेस की सरकार में अगर आप 12 लाख कमाते तो आपको 2,60,000 रुपया टैक्स में वापस देना पड़ता। अब भाजपा सरकार के कल के बजट के बाद साल में 12 लाख रुपया कमाने वाले को ₹1 भी टैक्स का देना नहीं पड़ेगा।
All right, so the Prime Minister driving home that message, and again, for the benefit of our audience, I'm just going to reiterate some of the C voter data points. 40.5% say they expect their quality of life to improve in the next year after the budget. More than 38% say the budget will help the middle class, right? Now, let's come to, now as we look at those images of the Dahi Chini being fed to the finance minister, let's now come to satisfaction with the budget. Right? That is one question you pose. How do you rate the budget? How do you look at the performance of both the Prime Minister and the Finance Minister in this particular budget? And we should say that you have some comparative data to previous years also. What was the mood with the budget? And that's very interesting. Now, 44.9%, that's nearly 45%, are satisfied with the budget, right? I didn't really put up don't know, can't say, but like I'm just putting up.
No, it's
right?
fine. It's perfectly fine.
Yeah.
So
Now,
anywhere, it's for the audience to understand. If anywhere it is not adding up 100%, that is because the rest is don't know, can't say.
That's right. So that's why I'm putting that caveat before they start telling you, Yashwant, your numbers don't add up. That I have not put don't know, can't say. And then you ask, okay, how do you rate the performance of the Prime Minister and the Finance Minister? And actually, it's quite interesting to see the responses. 30.5% say much better than expected, and 29%, let's say just as expected. 28.3% say worse than expected. Now let's take a look at the figure. You also ask them to rate the budget. How much would you give the budget out of 10? Can we just go to that last slide and I'll get Yashwant to respond to all of those. 5.89 out of 10. This is an upward swing in the C voter tracker when compared to the mood after budgets over the last few years. Now let's talk about these three slides altogether.
So basically, almost like 5.9 out of 10 is the highest that they have scored in the last 5 years, if we go back to that. And that's a good thing for the government, particularly seeking in mind that that the numbers given by the middle classes over here are almost reaching 6.5 and to the 7 rates, because in the last few years it was getting rated at 3s and 4s, and that's the kind of jump we are looking at. I mean, 5.9 out of 10, some people might say, that's not really a big deal. It is a big deal. Please understand this, because when things go wrong in the NDA, in the UPA 2.0, the numbers 10 years back were trending in between 2 to 3. So that's the kind of comparison. It's a hell of a good.
But it's a very interesting figure, because it also tells you that people are not gushing. People are very tough. People are tough.
People are always very tough. They are not gushing, and they do not gush also because of the fact, Barkha, that they might be happy for one thing, but they still make a very, very critical look at the rest of the things that you are doing.
But one question, I'm sorry I'm interrupting you, but it's a good audience question. How do we interpret the question just as expected? If we can go to that slide. Was the expectation positive or negative? I think it's a very interesting question.
It's a very, very interesting question, and I would love to answer that, because in the case of Modi government, the just as expected is coming from the high expectation area.
Okay.
Because if last year the worse than expected kind of thing, they were reaching almost 45%. So now you will understand the movement from the worse than expected, when it comes down from mid 40s to 28. The movement has happened not directly to much better than expected, but just as expected, because people always have had their supporters a really high expectation, particularly the middle class. And to give credit where due, the middle class has been in this country very, very patient, Barkha. Very patient. I mean, come to think of it, this entire freebie narrative for the last 10 years has been romping home across all the states, one election after the election. So much so that even BJP, which was critical of the freebie revdi culture, they had to take a U-turn in Delhi election. And their top banner is, we will not dilute any of the freebies, we will make them better. So that kind of U-turn. So middle class from a distance, which is watching everything, they are saying, okay, good that you are giving free food, good you are giving free electricity, whatever. But why everything has to come from my expense? Why I have to do it? And there is one very unique thing, Bakha. I remember 20 years back when we started this tracker, almost 22 years back. Um, I remember the first budget program which I was attending to, and I'm no economist. I had to understand the numbers on the TV. I was talking to everybody. So the first person I went to understand during the live show, I was just trying to send a mail and understand with my own chartered accountant that what does it matter? I mean, what is the kind of personal income tax brackets that we are earning? And one thing which kind of came as a bombshell to me was that at that point of time, the entire department which was collecting the personal taxation from people like you and me, their expenditure was more than the entire collection on the income tax department on the personal taxation. So it was a loss-making unit for the government of India. So my question was, why the hell are they collecting taxes? If it is my tax is going only into giving salary of the babus, not as per the advertisement कि ये bridge बनाने में खर्च हो रहा है, इसमें हो रहा है, उसमें हो रहा है. So from that area to now, of course, we have come a long way. The taxation brackets have gone up. Our salaries, our income has gone up. The middle class has taken off. But over the last 5-6 years, the middle class was being crushed. And I think this is where it is important to understand that even the as expected scenario is coming from the class which was having for 10 years really high expectations. They are very happy with the capital expenditure, infrastructure boost, everything. But at the end of the day, when you are sitting your own home, yaar mujhe kya mila is a question which every individual asks and has the right to ask in a democracy. There is nothing wrong in asking that ki mujhe kya mila. I think middle class was asking that. It was coming to a time where their patience was running out, and this entire thing of 12 lakh has come at a very, very right time so that to diffuse the pressure from the pressure cooker.
Okay, before I know you have to be on another show, but now I want to juxtapose all of these findings of the post budget with your findings on the local politics that are playing out in Delhi. Now, your tracker shows that Arvind Kejriwal, despite the fact that he is running an extremely shrill, bordering on kind of irrational rhetoric, for example, this talk of, he used this phrase, mass genocide, पीने वाला जो पानी है वो poisoned भेज रहे हैं, and all the rest of it. A confident person doesn't necessarily talk like this. But your survey has repeatedly found that Mr. Kejriwal, by a wide margin, is the most preferred candidate. There is some sign of, as we've been discussing, the halo vanishing, a certain amount of dissatisfaction with the Aam Aadmi Party, but not a wave of any kind of anti-incumbency, primarily because the other two parties don't seem to have fielded a chief ministerial face. Now, when you look at this post-budget optimism about the life that may lie ahead, and you juxtapose it with this finding, how do we make sense of it? The impact?
Well, Arvind Kejriwal's own popularity numbers and all satisfaction and everything, when you compare to 5 years back, the tracker number, what they showed, they had come down between 15 to 20% big time drop. But he is still, the number is number. 5 years back, this number was, instead of 46, it was 60%. But, it is 46, but it's still 46 is the number one. So what is happening here, Barkha, is that I think Arvind Kejriwal has converted the bottom of pyramid as a loyal vote bank. The lower middle class, the lower class, the slum dwellers, the minorities as a very, very loyal customer base. Now, for them, this budget would not have meant anything. But what happens in Delhi? Delhi being a metro, half of Delhi is also a middle class thing, kind of, aspirational middle class, whichever way you want to say. And that half of Delhi has not been very excited about the way BJP was handling them. Now that they are excited about it, eventually it will come down to the question of turnout, good turnout among different support bases. If the bottom of the pyramid support base actually comes out in bigger number, it is Arvind Kejriwal's game. If BJP, by virtue of their middle class budget, enthuses the middle class of the Delhi to come out and actually vote, and we all know Delhi, Barkha, south of Delhi, the turnout is pathetic. I mean, always the low income group and always the slums and always the constituencies and areas where not has have a bigger demographic profile, share in the profile, their turnouts are much better than the so-called middle and upper middle class across all metros in India. It has been a pathetic turnout. So it's a question of, now it's a battle of turnout of these relative vote banks. This is why Arvind Kejriwal today has gone all out in directly addressing the Jhuggi Jhopdi and bottom of the pyramid, saying, you know, you have to come out. Don't listen to the BJP कि तुम्हारे घर में वोट आ जाएगा, अपने हाथ में निशान मत लगने दो, and like that. So he has gone a direct pitch asking the bottom of the pyramid, please come out because your turnout matters. While the BJP, on the other hand, has first, number one, focused big time with the budget on the middle class, and they believe that rest of the thing will RSS will take care of, because now that cadre is enthusiastic, they can go and they can do what they did in Haryana and what they did in Maharashtra and do their magic. So Delhi is now very, very evenly balanced. Yes, Arvind Kejriwal remains 47, 48, 46% with the top priority of, as a preferred chief minister. That fact is there, but that is now largely Barkha, because of the demographics. Because it's the demography, the bottom of the pyramid, which is still going for and rooting for Arvind Kejriwal, but he has lost the middle class. That's a big deal. That's a big thing that has happened for the BJP, that Arvind Kejriwal has largely lost the middle classes. Good or bad or ugly, whichever way side of anybody who is listening to us right now, they can make their own thing. But for the BJP, the problem is the middle classes are the most unpredictable people in terms of turnout.
That's right.
Turnout is a problematic thing with the middle class. If they come out in big number, BJP will be extremely delighted. If they do not still come out in big number, then Arvind Kejriwal will be very, very, very delighted.
Okay, I can hear your phone pinging, so you're probably being called for your next show. Tell me how much time we have with you. Is your time up with us?
We can still go on for 2 minutes. I mean, that's
okay.
Fine.
So let's use all our time to its maximum. There are two interesting things. You said Kejriwal has lost the middle class. A very ironic development, because Kejriwal was a middle class politician when he was born. When the Aam Aadmi Party was born, Kejriwal was seen to be a middle class icon. BJP, you say, is evenly balanced now, despite the C voter finding that Arvind Kejriwal is a preferred choice for candidate. There is even talk that Kejriwal is facing a tough contest on his own turf in his own seat, with a triangular contest, with Sandeep Dixit giving it everything he has, even if the party is, the Congress is fighting a somewhat lukewarm campaign in Delhi. Your thoughts about the transition of Kejriwal from middle class to now making the lower part of the pyramid his base, and the BJP's renewed attempt to court the middle class but without a face, without a leading face. And Modi, your earlier trackers have shown, is not a big factor for the voter, or wasn't before the budget in this election.
Well, there are very, very valid points from both the sides. When the Aam Aadmi Party people talk to me, they on the panels and otherwise, they say that this base we are holding, and we will make sure that they come out, and that should electorally deliver it to us. They also concede the point that they have lost middle class. They concede the point that high moral ground is no more. But they also assert that the new USP of freebie-driven governance, we have proven it, and we trust it will work for us. On the side of the BJP, the points have to be well taken that they have moved beyond Modi factor in the assembly elections in Haryana, Jammu, and even in Maharashtra, and they have won. They have won a state like Tripura, a state like Odisha without a chief minister's face, for that matter. So they have gone back to the basics, Barkha. They have just gone to the organizational thing. Last thing which I want to say is that apart from Arvind Kejriwal's popularity and the middle classes and everything, I think one more critical thing is there. Aam Aadmi Party used to be a party of volunteers. I am not very sure if those volunteers who have been turned into professionals, if the zing is still the same kind of thing. On the other hand, BJP, which had dumped the cadres earlier, Dil the Lok Sabha, have rediscovered the cadre, because they have just gone back to the RSS, game plan that, okay, we need the cadre. And their cadre is enthusiastic. So it is a kind of ironical situation. We will know how it is going to work after the final results. But somehow something is telling me that Aam Aadmi Party is no more having that kind of a volunteer and cadre-driven kind of upswing. Yes, they are professional, no doubt about that. Much better than the Congress, the way it handles the polling operations. So that is there. But I think this cadre and volunteer thing could very well be one of the things for us to observe how this has played out.
You and I belong to a generation where there used to be an advertisement called for a cola. It used to be called Gold Spot, the Zing thing. And Delhi so far, the Zing thing. And Delhi so far, in my estimation, has been an election without a zing.
Yes, very true. So far, it has been an election without the zing.
Yeah. So I think you're very perceptive in saying now it all boils down to turnout. But before we let you go, you are saying that you believe that Delhi is a wide open election.
Delhi is a wide open election. It is now. Yes, Arvind Kejriwal has his own advantages. We have been talking about it. But BJP has always hammered down with the advantage of the organization, and now they are doubling it down with the middle class bonanza that they have declared yesterday. I think at the end of the day, on the 5th, when the polling happens, both the camps, it will be just coming down to the fact कि किसके लोग कितने बाहर निकले, who has been more successful and getting their voters out to the booth. That will decide it. Otherwise, both the camps are very, very evenly poised at this point.
Interesting, Yashwant. We're going to let you go. You're a man much in demand. Thanks for making the time with us. Talk to you soon, and especially on exit poll and counting day. We look forward to talking to you.
Sure.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Yashwant. Bye-bye. It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.